Hey friends, welcome to Social Videos. My name is Joan and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a paper origami star garland box. Now this thing on my TikTok channel blew up, so I know some of you guys are waiting for a tutorial on how to make this. It's honestly pretty simple, very cute, perfect for a little present box, and a wonderful gift to give someone or even just to gift and keep for yourself. Materials and timestamps will be down below. Feel free to comment if you have any questions. With that, I think we can get started on making our origami stars.
Now the first thing is making our paper origami stars. The big question I get asked is what are my measurements, so I'm putting them here up on the screen. And after cutting my first strip of paper, I'm gonna go ahead and make a loop at one end of my strip of paper and put the end through the loop to make a shape that kind of looks like this. I'm gonna keep adjusting gently and tugging at the paper strip to kind of make sure there's no gaps in this kind of pentagon folded over shape that I'm doing. And I'm going to flatten it as it rests into a shape that I'm happy with. Taking the excess edge, I'm gonna fold it to the back of my pentagon, and then I'm gonna take the long end of my strip and start wrapping it around the sides of my pentagon. The width of the paper should line up with the width of the pentagon, and the general idea is that we want to wrap this long strip of paper all around, going over the sides that are just right next to the side that we just went over. It's a bit tough to try and explain verbally, but you can just copy what I'm doing here. You might have to wiggle and adjust your paper strip a bit, but eventually it will wrap all the way around. And you want to keep going until you have a little bit of excess left that you can't fully fold over the other side, and that's when you just tuck it into your folded pentagon. Once you've gently pushed it in, it is now time to make the star shape. And to do that, you're going to try to hold the star just like I'm doing here and just pinch with your left hand to make the legs of the stars. It's really important to be really gentle and patient here and kind of feel out how much pressure is needed to make those little indents, just to make sure you don't accidentally crush your star and that you keep the puffy shape. I'm then just going to keep making stars, making my loop, folding the end through, making my pentagon, folding the edge to the back, and then just wrapping the long piece of paper strip that I have left all the way around the pentagon until I cannot wrap it anymore. It may also get to the point where it's too long to wrap all the way around, but it can't fit into your pocket, so you can just cut off a bit of the ends and then just tuck it in. And this part was a bit tough for me sometimes, but you really just gotta wiggle and gently push it in before making the indents to your stars, and once again you have a puffy origami star. Now the amount of stars you'll need to make really depends on how big your stars are and how many you want in your box, and also the size of your box. The more stars you have, the more cooler I think the box is going to look. And you can also use different colored papers or patterned papers to make the look a bit more interesting. I ended up just sticking with a pink and blue theme, and I also plan to have 5 strings with 6 stars on them, so I ended up making 30 stars with a few more as extra just in case I accidentally crushed or lost some of them. But if you're done making your stars, it's time to move on to making the box. Now I think this is where it gets tough for a lot of people, and also definitely the part I was most scared of. I think the easiest thing is either reusing a box that you have or just printing out a box template from the internet. If you're a tryhard like me, you can also try making your own template. The one I ended up drawing is based on this one that I found, but I chose my own measurements. The biggest tip for this part would be to just make sure that your measurements are as precise and accurate as possible. Otherwise, your box may look a bit misshapen and wonky, and your lid might not fit on it properly. And if you're making your own measurements, the most important part is getting your measurements for the base square correct. It should be the same base square shape for all sides, bottom, and top of the box. And then for the flaps, it doesn't matter as much as long as you're consistent with whatever side of the box you're working on. Like for example, these triangle shapes over here, I'm just making sure that they're the same measurement for all 4 corners. Their actual measurement in relation to the box isn't as big of a deal. Same goes for the flaps on the actual box portion. Just try and keep it consistent best you can. And once you've got a template, it's now time to start cutting it all out. For cutting, I like to cut out my pieces first from the big piece of paper that I'm using, and then cutting the details of everything later. Again, it's pretty important to make sure that you're cutting everything as precisely as you can. Of course, we don't want our meticulous measuring to go to waste. And before I cut the edges or flaps of my lid, I'm going to fold all of the edges first. This just ensures that all of my cutting is straight so far and kind of starts putting together and forming the box shape. Since again the box that we're trying to make is something that looks like this, the parts that I'm folding right now are going to make up the sides of the lid, and then the traced out triangle corner pieces are what we're going to cut and then eventually glue to the adjacent side, which will form our box edge, just like so. And then after cutting off all of your 4 corners, I'm just then gonna fold everything to ensure that, again, measurements are correct and that the shape is what I want it to be. I'm also making sure that my folds are nice, crisp, and straight. For reference on your side of things, it should look something like this. And with that then, we can then move on to folding our actual box portion. Taking the longer side of my template, I'm just gonna fold everything basically inwards towards each other. And this long portion is going to be what makes the sides of my box, and this bottom portion is going to be my base. I'm also going to fold in all of the tabs that are trimmed at the corners. Again, these will actually be used to glue our box together, but they won't actually be seen on the outside appearance of the box. Once again, I'm making sure that my folds are crisp and straight as can be, and I should be making 3 folds to make up the 4 walls of my box. And if all goes well, your paper should look something like this. And you can see that it already forms the shape of the box, and all that's left is to glue the tabs together to make our paper box portion of this DIY. Now with everything cut up and folded, we can go ahead and start gluing. And the general idea here is to glue your flaps to whatever side of the box it is facing. It's really important to make sure that you're gluing things down very securely, making sure things are actually sticking on. Otherwise your box will just start to fall apart. Making sure I'm gluing and holding everything down to make sure it sticks. I'm done with my box portion. I'm going to move on to gluing together my lid, which is going to be just gluing on the little triangle flaps to the other side that they are touching. Once again, we're going to make sure that everything is attached as securely as possible. And if the measurements you did earlier were right, there shouldn't be any warping or bending of the box needed. Everything should just fit like a puzzle piece, all neat and nice together. Now that we're finished making our box, it is time to string on our origami stars. You'll need some thread or string and a needle. I'm planning on making 5 strings of stars, so I'm just splitting them into 5 groups with my colors that I wanted. And after stringing on my string and preparing that, I'm also going to grab some Mod Podge or a glue gun to help me attach the stars on the string after I string them on. The next part for stringing the stars is pretty satisfying. All you're going to do is just take your needle, put it through the stars, and then just string them on to your string. The idea is that with your string of stars, we're going to be attaching it to our lid, which is going to give us the garland effect. And it's really important to make sure that when you're stringing on your stars, you're being gentle with the paper stars and not squishing them so they don't lose their puffy star shape. You just want to try and push the needle through the bottom of the star all the way across to the top. Once it punctures through the paper, just gently moving it along the string, and then just repeating that for the rest of the stars that are going on. It's kind of up to you to decide how many stars you want to string along one thread. It really just kind of depends on the size of your stars, how far you want them spaced apart, and also how big your box is. I decided on 6 stars for my string, and here I'm just evenly spacing them out before starting on the step to make sure the stars don't move along the string when we're using the box. To do this, I'm just taking some Mod Podge on a Q-tip and just kind of gluing down the string to the bottom of the star, but you can also do this with a glue gun, which is a bit more faster and efficient. I also found that it made sure the stars didn't move at all and I didn't have to wait for the Mod Podge to dry. But whatever method you did, as long as the star stays in place on the string, you're good to go. So as I said earlier in the video, I plan to have 5 strings of stars, and I'm planning on gluing them on with 1 string on each corner and then one of the strings in the middle as my 5th one. To do the gluing, I'm just using my hot glue gun, putting a bit of a blob, and then making sure I'm submerging my string end onto the lid and making sure it sticks on, and then just repeating that for all 5 of my strings. Now again, if you have smaller stars, I would recommend trying to do more strings to make the box look more full, but this amount seemed good for me for the size of stars that I had. And for some last minute touches, I'm just going to snip off some excess string that I had on the ends, before finally putting in all my stars in the box, closing the lid. And now all that's left to do is to admire your beautiful handiwork. I think it would make a really good gift box, which is exactly what I ended up using it for. And overall, it was a really fun and cute paper craft.